When people ask me, what's so special about First Baptist on Fifth? I answer quickly. It's not our building, though lovely, or our worship, though meaningful, not our gatherings, though life-giving, or even our missions and ministries in the world, though impactful. The very best part of First on Fifth? Our people, hands down. In our confession of identity, we said this of our community. Here, you'll see retirees and families with rambunctious little ones, teenagers discovering their identities, middle-agers juggling all the demands of this season, young people navigating adulthood for the first time, and seniors rich in wisdom and encouragement. You can read our fiery op-eds in the paper, pass us moving about on the city streets, see us building ramps for the underserved, catch us finding beauty in our gardens and on hiking trails, and experience us taking delight in the world. At the core of our community, we are folks who love each other well. And at the core of our life together, we share in meaningful conversation about what it means to live and love in this world. That's what you'll hear and who you'll hear from in our new podcast series called Life Together. Each episode will be hosted by one of our ministers and will feature a conversation with one or two or even several of our beloved church members. They'll answer a handful of questions about their story, about objects or artifacts that represent their journey, about questions or doubts they wrestle with, and why they are a member, and finally, what gives them hope. As you listen to their wisdom and laughter, their audacious hope and abundant love, I trust you'll be as inspired and moved as I am on the regular. T.S. Eliot once asked, "What life have you if you have not life together?" Join us this season for Life Together.
Hello and welcome to the First Baptist on Fifth Life Together podcast series. We want to say thank you to all those who are watching and those who are listening. Thank you for joining us today. For today, we are so glad to have Chris and Joy Gambill. I'm going to tell a little bit about them, and then you're going to get to hear from them in just a moment. But they both have extensive backgrounds. We're going to share just a little bit in your bio, and then we're going to give you a chance to share a little bit more. We'll start with Chris. So Chris is the Reverend Dr. Chris Gambill. He's an ordained Baptist minister, a church consultant. Praise be for that. That's helped us a lot. Board-certified coach. He's completed a BA in religion from Wake Forest University, go Deeks, a Master of Divinity from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, that was back in the good old days, yes, and a PhD in Industrial Organizational Psychology from Capella University. He's currently the Associate Vice President for the Faith Health Division at Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center, and he's formerly served as Director of the Center for Congregational Health, a ministry of the medical center, and has also served as a pastor, a missionary, a campus minister, church consultant, and has assisted hundreds of churches and church leaders across the United States. Just a few things to keep you busy. Yeah. But married to the amazing and wonderful Joy Gambill, who is an instruction librarian at Wake Forest University, has completed a BSBA, which is a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from East Carolina University, go Pirates, a Master of Divinity from Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, also back in the good old days, and a Master of Science in Library Science from UNC Chapel Hill, my personal favorite, go Tar Heels. They have two grown children, Macon, who's married to Adelaide, and Katie, who's married to Jordan. Now, I did do a little research. They have been members here for 20 years this upcoming October. And I had the pleasure of serving them as one of their ministers for half of that time, only 10 years. So I have a ways to go. I've also known Chris a little bit even before coming here. He came and did a lecture for me at Campbell Divinity School back in the day, and I thought, this guy's really smart. I had no idea that we would have this relationship. He also helped me with the CBF Fellows program, and that's the first time I met Joy. She came to a fellows gathering with us, and we went out to dinner, and you sat next to me, and it was just so kind that you made me feel so welcomed. And when I came here, I was not surprised. They made you the hospitality team leader, so we got to serve in that way together as well. Both of them have been deacons at this church. Chris has served as our deacon chair. And a fun fact, as we're recording this right now, today is Chris's birthday. He's 17 years old. I don't know. We're not going to say his age, but today is his birthday. So happy birthday to Chris.
Thank you very much.
We're so glad to have both of you with us today. And what we're going to do is just ask a few questions.
Sure.
And you answer them as the Spirit leads. And we'll go as the Spirit leads to if it goes in a different direction. But let's start with just tell us a story, particularly any people or places or seasons of your life that have most powerfully shaped you and your understanding of God and yourself. So either one of you that wants to start us off.
Okay, so I'll start. My father was a Baptist minister, so I am fully entrenched in preacher's kid life. I grew up in rural North Carolina, so I've been in North Carolina all my life. And so that had a big impact on me. But my father was a very conservative minister, and it was not until I went to East Carolina and I was in the Baptist Student Union that I really became Christian. I don't know how to describe it, but it changed my life. Being with Bob Clyde and having a new perspective on what it could mean to be a Christ follower. So that was a big impact on my life. And then the next big piece, I guess, for me was I had a sister who was my middle sister. And when she was 53 years old, she died from a brain tumor. And that also had a very big impact on my life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Chris, you want to share a little bit?
Well, it's hard to pick one story. I think there's several ones that have had a huge impact on me. I think as I've gotten older, it's my birthday, I actually have come to realize how much my extended family has played a huge role in my life. My dad was one of, I think, 10, and then my mother was one of 11. And so I have more cousins than I've even met. But as a child, most of those extended families, a lot of parts of those lived pretty close. And, growing up as a child, I have all these memories of caregivers who were all related to me. And on a given day, I was never sure who was going to be. Could have even been my sister, who was 16 years older than me. But I also realize that now that they taught me a lot about faith and a lot about life. And I've come to appreciate them more and more as I've gotten older, of how much impact they had on me in ways that I really didn't recognize, I think, for most of my life.
Yeah. That's a lot of family. That could
Yeah.
be like its own church with that many people, like a
yeah.
mini congregation.
Yeah, it sometimes felt that way on Sunday afternoons.
Oh man, like Sunday afternoon lunch or something.
Yes.
Another fun fact, speaking of like just a lot of family, you guys also love fur babies as family.
Yes.
So you may not, those of you who don't know Chris and Joy, they love cats. That's like the animal of choice for
Well,
your
cats
house.
love us. That's hard to
Well,
say.
that's true. Cats do love you. I always think people who love pets, like that says a lot about your souls, that you're good people if you love pets. And you've instilled that in your kids, right? Like both of them have
That's right.
pets. Okay.
But it takes one to know one. Right?
Takes one to know one. Yeah, that's right. I'm an animal person.
Katie would say that if you don't like animals and animals don't like you, that's saying a whole lot about you. Right?
I know.
I think she's not
Well,
wrong.
I know this podcast is about you too, but I will say your daughter, Katie, went with me to the animal shelter and literally laid in the floor of the animal shelter in the cat room.
Yes.
There's a cat that crawled on top of her. She's laying next to litter boxes. And
Yes.
she said, this is your cat. You need to take this one home. And that was 7 years ago. And I still have my little cat. So I'm grateful for that. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit more about just who you are and kind of what got you to this point. One of the questions we ask people is to bring some sort of artifact that can maybe symbolize things about your life. We've had all kinds of artifacts, and we're always curious to see them for people watching and for those who are listening to help describe what those are. But I think you have some things today that you brought with you. So if you don't mind to share what artifact you brought and what it means.
You want to go first or me?
I'll go first. So I'm wearing a necklace that was given to my mother from my dad. It has her initials on the back. And I think the older I get, the more I'm becoming my mother, which is a little terrifying. But she was an English teacher,
Yeah.
and she loved literature, and
Oh.
she taught high school English, and her students
Mm-hmm.
will
They
come
were
up to me
children.
when I visit. They were children. But like when I'll come back, they'll quote Shakespeare and things that they learned in her class, and I think that literature lifts the soul just as much as scripture sometimes, and so I think that I've come to love and appreciate my mom, and at her heart. She was a writer, and she has left notebooks and notebooks of writing that she's done she did all the way back from the time that she was a child. And I can feel myself becoming all that the older I get. And I'm learning to lean into that and appreciate who she was.
So wearing that every day is like this reminder of your mom, which is so beautiful. And I will say, we are the recipients of your like weekly emails that you send to your Sunday school class, and you are a wordsmith. And one of the things I do love about the way you frame your faith is you do pull in other literature and readings to inform your faith, and it's beautiful. It's a skill that I'm not sure I have at all, and you do it wonderfully. So that makes a lot of sense. Your necklace and the connection with your mom. That's awesome. Chris, do you have an artifact today?
I do. It's one of many. This is one of my Swiss Army knives. I actually have a small knife collection because they've always kind of fascinated me, and I'm pretty much never without one of some kind, except at the airport.
Yeah.
The Swiss Army knife symbolizes several things for me. First of all, I'm an Eagle Scout, which is also one of those other really formative experiences for me. I draw on parts of that still every day of my life. But so the Scout motto is be prepared, and having a knife, especially one that has lots of different tools, is a great way to do that. And I remember thinking at one point as a young adult that I'm wondering how I would describe myself if someone were to ask me that question.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that as I thought about myself, that I'm a person who knows a whole lot about who knows something about a lot of things, rather than deep into one thing. And for me, that's been a really helpful skill, because I've, in my ministry and in my working life, I've found myself in so many different situations, and I never really knew day to day what I was going to face. And so having some different tools and different perspectives and things to bring to bear has served me very well. And I can't think of anything that kind of epitomizes that more than a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. When you said like being prepared, there was a saying that I learned a long time ago, and it's prior proper planning prevents poor performance. And it reminds me of like, the Scouts, and whether, boys or girls or whomever, planning and being prepared in whatever life throws at you is important.
Correct.
That's cool. I like that little Swiss Army knife. Who knew? Well, I know both of you guys lived overseas for a long time as missionaries. Both of you have done incredible work in your different fields of study. Throughout your life together as a married couple, and you could even go prior to your marriage even. Are there moments where you had questions or doubts that you wrestled with, whether with God or just life in general, And is that something you could share with us today? Any questions or doubts you've wrestled with?
More than 15 minutes ago, you mean? I'm just asking.
It's just every few minutes, right? It just keeps happening.
Well, I think I've always had more questions than answers, and growing up in church, I can honestly say I was never really satisfied with any of the answers to my questions, and so part of the theme of my life has been trying to understand some of the complexities, find a way to hold some of the paradoxes, and I often describe it as also trying to integrate the heart and the mind, because I saw lots of people who could excel at one or the other, but not so many who can put the two together in a really powerful way. And my observation was the people who could do that were the people I most admired and wanted to be around. And so I decided, I think I want to be one of those. I want to have both. I don't want to have to give up one or the other to fit in that way. So that's not so much a question as is a whole bunch of questions, but it's served me well as I've tried to as I've grappled with different theological and philosophical questions throughout my life. It gave me permission to look to a lot of sources to find those answers, and using my Swiss Army knife, find meaningful ways to integrate those into me and kind of move forward. So
it's almost like what you embody as a person of faith, like how you embody those questions and how you bring together the heart and the mind. Mm-hmm. How do you do that well?
How do you do it well?
Well, that's the question, right?
Yeah,
how do you do it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That is the question. I think it's easy to get hijacked, especially emotionally hijacked. And so I think that's the biggest barrier for most people, and some days for me.
Yeah, thank you. Joy, what about you?
I think that my whole life has been a process of deconstructing and reconstructing my faith and trying to figure out what it all means and what I'm supposed to be doing right now with my life. I find all of life to be a mystery. The older I get, the more I know, the less I know. And I feel like, like when we went as missionaries, I was so sure. I grew up in this church where we had these missionaries that were just extraordinary people who had given their lives, and I wanted to be those people, I wanted, they were some of the smartest people I'd ever met. And then we came through at the time when the Southern Baptist Convention takeover came, and it was devastating, pretty much, because we had to break down, or I had to break down. He's always been more skeptical about everything, but I kind of had all my eggs in that basket, and believing that this is the way it should be, and this is all good and right, and just the realization that, man, this is wrong, and then having to rebuild from that. And then there have been other moments. I think like being with my sister as she died was one of the most sacred moments of my life. It was when Sherry Jones had just talked about this with her sister, where I actually had the opportunity to be in that thin space when Nancy died, and we were on holy ground, and I think that was when my faith became so real. I mean, I was like, this is not a theory. This is real. And it was beautiful and sacred, and from that moment on, it was this quest to try to figure out life, and really, I don't have much time, and I've got to do the best I can, and figure out what it is God wants us to do, what God wants me to do. And then I think being in the conversations class has been so helpful for me. again, deconstructing a lot of stuff that I grew up with and reconstructing and trying to figure out my faith and live it out the best I can. And I think love is always the bottom line through all of it. I'm not sure how we came up with such a mess of our, with our theology and life, and so in the world, and so I think it's been a lot of doubt, and it's been a lot of reconstruction and finding the beautiful things.
Yeah.
In the darkness.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I resonate with so much of what both of you said, particularly you, Joy, just the deconstruction of embedded theology, like what we
Right.
learn.
Right.
And then you realize, wait a minute, people that taught us that are people
Right.
who are imperfect and
Mhm.
doing the best they can,
Right.
and realizing none of us really have it all figured out.
Right.
So deconstruct that, like I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me to this question of there's so many faith communities in our world, and both of you have been through a lot of different ministerial kind of settings. Chris, with your work, Joy, with your work, and also just your missionary work. So my question is, why in the world did you choose First on Fifth? You could have gone anywhere. Why did you choose First on Fifth?
Scott Hudgens.
Scott Hudgens.
So I did not know Scott Hudgens at all, but Chris went to the welcome desk. We had a welcome desk at that time, the very first day we visited, and he came up to the desk and he said, "Can you tell me what class Scott Hudgens is in?" And they didn't know. I mean, the people at the desk didn't know at the time, but they found him, and I didn't know Scott Hudgens, but Chris trusted him. Just knowing him and who he was, and so we ended up in the Covenant class.
Yeah.
And who could not want to be a part of this church, but being among that group of people? Oh my, they're still my heart people.
Yeah.
I mean, I may be in the conversations class and love them with all my heart, but deep, deep down in me, conversations class. I mean, the
Covenant
class, they're my heart people.
Yeah. Well, that was your original class.
That was our original class. And they were the ones who got me through my sister's death. I mean, they were there through that whole time. And it was a couple of years total. And I do love those people so much. And who wouldn't want to be a part of this church if you knew those people?
Yeah. I did not know that. Scott Hudgens is the reason.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to add anything to that?
Well,
why'd you stay around? I mean,
well, certainly Scott and Mary were a big part of that. There were some other people here that I mean, I knew David Hughes because I grew up in Elkin and wasn't close to David, wasn't part of his church, but I knew David. And as we hung around, I realized that there were several other people here that we actually knew. And I have found that if people I know and respect and trust like something, I should probably pay attention. And so we trusted that instinct. I think at the time that we joined, according to you, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my. It wasn't. It was at a hard time in a lot of ways for the church. And part of my reasoning at the time, and I, we talked about this, was at the time I was interested in something that had potential and could be better. And as opposed to a church that looked like it was already thriving or at the top of its, golden year arc or whatever. And I just felt like at the time that First Baptist had that kind of potential that it hadn't lived into in a long time. So turns out I was probably right.
Yeah.
I know I've already had my turn, but I've
No,
got one
go,
quick
yeah,
other
go
thing that
for
was
it.
amazing about this church when we were looking at churches, and they were doing a Lord of the Rings series on Wednesday nights.
Whoa.
And
That's different.
they came to Bookmarks to advertise it. And
Ah.
and I thought, man, that's like my people. Those are my people.
Well, and that makes sense because you are someone who you love books and literature, and
those were
you
my people.
You were
So
drawn,
the combination of all those things, it was just like everything was so clear.
just clicking for you.
Yeah.
Well, you've both been here 20 years. We've named that. I'm wondering, and you might have the same answer or two different answers, but is there like a quintessential First on Fifth story that you would say this defines First on Fifth?
I just think about all the food that I've eaten with I don't know why, but when I think about all the different events all the tables we've sat around,
Mm-hmm.
that's for me quintessential.
Yeah.
At First Baptist, we've had a lot of parties on our porch. For those of you, for
Mhm.
those,
Yeah.
a lot of people
I've
have
been to some of those. Yeah.
been in our house for that. But before we lived at this house, we lived in another house, and we used to have pool parties, and we were popular because we had a pool.
Well, maybe
And-
you were popular because you're Joy and Chris Gambill. The pool was an added
Nah.
bonus.
We don't have a pool anymore. But just even here, all the like fellowships outside, all the different things we've done here. That's and we're so grateful.
Mhm.
Those are our moments. That's when we're at our best. I think
When we're gathered.
when we're gathered.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I think I have a version of the same answer. I used to say, I had to back off on it for reasons you'll see in a second, but I used to say I wasn't interested in joining a church that didn't have a Wednesday night supper.
Mm. And ironically, for
And
those
we had
listening,
a really
we do
good
not have a
one.
Wednesday
We
night
had a really
supper
good one
anymore.
back then, although we don't
Yeah.
have anything now, so yeah, I don't know. But what I had come to understand was that you don't really become integrated deeply into a faith community if all you do is show up for an hour on Sunday morning.
Hmm.
It's not possible. And so at the time in church cultures, that Wednesday night was the antidote. And so that's where we got to know so many people that we would never really cross paths with any other way. And that became a really important glide path into feeling more a part of this community. Most churches use the term community or church family a lot, but the truth is most of them don't live into that. So for most people, it looks like kind of a shallow, hour to a week maybe
Mhm.
commitment, and you don't build that sense of community that way. So I've appreciated how much this congregation as a whole seemed to always value that, both programmatically, but just in the ways that people genuinely cared for us at different times. I remember a few years ago I had to have, I think it was a colonoscopy. Everybody should have one.
Public service announcement.
Public
go,
service.
go get that done.
And I can't remember. I guess Joy couldn't go. You have to have a driver.
Yeah.
And I think she was teaching or something. But anyway, I was, trying to figure out, well, how's this going to work? And so I thought, well, I could ask some of my church. And so John Baxley took me to my colonoscopy.
There you go.
And stayed there and drove me back home.
Wow.
And that's the other thing
That's cool.
about our jobs, not just ours, but in ministry. We never have we ever lived in a place where there was a single family member.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I admit that I was often kind of jealous. People would say, I'm going to go drop my children off at my sister's house tomorrow. I'm thinking, what would that be like?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, the substitute for that was always our church family. And I think that's something that this church has been for us and done well for us in lots of ways. And I'm very thankful because otherwise who takes you to your colonoscopy? You
I'm
better
just
re-
thinking when I
you
get
need to
mine scheduled,
wrestle
I'll
with
call
that
Joy and Joy
You
can
might as
take me.
well. But that's the kind of thing that you don't call on usually a casual acquaintance to do. That's somebody you would know that cared about you, and it wouldn't feel put out to been asked to do that.
Yeah, church family. It truly is family.
It's amazing. It's a miracle. Like even for his birthday, the birthday cards that he got, Minerva Fox and Linda Merchant, Joni Hughes, people how can you just not love being a part of a church that they'll send you a card for your birthday? Nobody does that, you know?
Yeah,
So sweet.
act of love for sure.
Yeah.
You guys have kind of talked a lot about this already, but I want to ask a little more pointed and direct. But
Sure.
What would be something that is bringing you or giving you hope right now? You said a lot of things, but I
got a fast answer.
Okay, go
It
for
would
it.
be our church and specifically the conversations class. I never thought I would have the opportunity to be a part of a church or a group like we're a part of right now that I just love so much. And I feel like we're in the right direction. I mean, this is like the best place to possibly go to church. And I've never felt that way ever. There's always been some little something like, yeah, you can come to my church, but but
Be
now
aware this is
I'm
going to
like,
happen.
you should come. I mean, you should be here. You should experience this. And it is so wonderful to be in a good place, theologically and with community, all kinds of different reasons to love it.
That should be like our little tagline under our name, First Baptist Church on Fifth. This is the absolute best church ever you could come to. Quote, Joy Gambill.
Feel free to use that.
Okay, we'll do that. Chris, what about you? What's bringing you hope right now?
It may be inaccurate. It probably is. I'm sure it's less than it should be, but I have a picture in my head of the kingdom of God. At least part of what it might look, what Jesus was trying to describe through metaphor and other ways. And I think secretly I've always, been in search of some earthly human version of that that at least gets closer. And I think for me, our church comes much closer to that than other places that I've been a part of at other times. And by that, I mean, the simplest, the simplest, cleanest definition of God is love. You can add other stuff on, but you can't take that away. And love is what it is, and is, as we tried to say in our mission and vision statement, it's boundless, and I would say boundaryless. And it's hard to do that for most churches. Really, really hard. Yes, there's always a yes followed by a but. And I'm sure we've got a yes but somewhere, but it's much more common to hear the yes. And if you show up on Sunday and look around, you see that. You see real life examples of that. And I find that really powerful and encouraging. And I suspect if I were an artist and could draw a picture of the kingdom of God, it would be that kind of wide embracing of diversity in all different levels, bound together with love. And that's kind of the way I experience our church.
Yeah.
It gives me hope.
That's a good image. Yeah, I like that a lot. Well, both of you are amazing people. And while, you've shared part of your faith journey here today, you continue to help mold the faith of other people through your Sunday school class, through your work at your at the university, through your work at the hospital. And we are so, so grateful to each of you and your family for the ways that you make us laugh, that you call us to serious moments to really reflect, pointing us to literature that can be seen through the eyes of faith, which is such a beautiful gift. Chris, for the way you continue to ask questions and challenge us to do the same. So we're grateful to both of you, and we're so glad you're here. And we're glad that you shared with us today. So thank you for being here with us. We also want to say thank you to our listeners today for joining in and listening. And we invite you to tune in to the other podcasts wherever you find your podcast. You can also do that by visiting our website, firstonfifth.org, or wherever you get your podcasts. I think that's the cool thing we're supposed to say. So please find us. Thank you again, Chris and Joy Gambill, for being here, and we will see everyone next week.